So, Tadej Pogacar is the winner of the Tour de France 2025, and it wasn't even close. In today's video, I'll be rating every single team at the Tour de France from S tier, best of the best, to DNS. They might as well have not started. Anyway, starting off with our first team, Alpecin de Koning. Honestly, I think it's fair to say Alpecin de Koning had a pretty great start to this Tour de France. Jasper Philipsen wins stage 1, takes the first yellow jersey, and on the second day, Mathieu van der Poel wins and takes a second yellow jersey. But of course, the team did take a massive hit in week 1 when Jasper Philipsen crashed out. And honestly, I think he would have won green. Anyway, the team does fight back with another stage win on stage 20 by Caden Groves. But actually, I think my favorite memory from Alpecin in this race is the duo attack of Ricard and Van der Poel on stage 9. That was epic. Alpecin de Koning had an A-tier Tour de France, the first team on the board. Our next team also had a pretty good Tour de France, Arkea B&B Hotels. I think Kevin Vauquelin could have won multiple stages at this Tour de France, but he chose to go for GC. And honestly, it was the right choice. Finishing 7th in GC, so a nice top 10, outstanding result. And I feel like this team was more than just Vauquelin, Garcia Pierna, Rodriguez, strong in the mountains. A B-tier performance for Arkea B&B Hotels. I think all of us agree that Astana had a pretty fantastic season so far, but this Tour de France was not that great. They brought a collection of stage hunters, but outside of a few top 10 positions, they didn't deliver anything competitive. Honestly, outside of Ballerini on stage 21, I don't remember much. I'm afraid it's a D for Astana Kazakhstan. Next up, Bahrain Victorious. Lenny Martinez was their main man in this Tour de France, hunting for the polka dot jersey. But despite a few sticky bottles, he simply lacked the durability to conquer multiple mountains per mountain stage, and then you can't compete with Tadej Pogacar for the polka dots. A D-tier Tour de France by Bahrain, not so victorious. Now a team with a pretty proper budget, Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. To this Tour de France, they brought a team with limited support for their GC riders, and they brought a full train for Jordi Meus. But Jordi Meus crashed in the first week. And in that same first week, Lipovic and Roglic kept losing time. But in the mountains, they gradually crawled back. I'll be honest, when it comes to their tactics in week 3, this team tried their absolute best to lose Lipovic's podium. But Lipovic was strong enough to bring home that podium and the white jersey. A-tier performance by Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. Now when it comes to our next team, I don't remember Cofidis doing anything of note in this entire Tour de France, so their score is easy. Our first team at the bottom of the ranking, DNS, they might as well have not been here. Aramburu's f***ing washed, ay ay ay. On to another French team, the Decathlon AG2R with Felix Gall as their GC rider, who is losing quite a bit of time in week 1, but in the mountains towards the end of the race, gradually climbed the GC, eventually finishing with a pretty solid 5th place in GC, so that's good for Gall. I think B tier for the Decathlon AG2R. When it comes to EF Education first, Ben Healy won stage 7 and eventually went into the break again on stage 10 to take the yellow jersey for a day and then eventually won the Super Combativity Prize. But I feel like Healy's success was not just Ben Healy, but also the team around him, Nelson Paulus, Harry Sweeney, Alex Baudin. They played an essential role. I've got B tier for EF Education first. Back to another French team then, Groupama FDG. Their lesser known riders like Clément Rousseau and Louis Oski were pretty great at positioning their leader, Romain Grégoire, in week 1, and Grégoire was pretty good in week 1, but after that, faded a bit. I simply expected competitiveness for breakaway victories, and that did not happen. D tier is my score for Groupama FDG. Time to talk about the Ineos Grenadiers, starting off with Carlos Rodriguez. Started off relatively competitive for top 10 in GC, but eventually crashed out. Meanwhile, Tijmen Arensman arrived without GC ambitions and delivered amazingly. 2 stage wins on Super Bagnères and La Plagne. B tier for the team of Ineos. Our next team, Intermarche, is a pretty sad discussion. Biniam came to the Tour de France with an impossible task, providing a sequel to his 2024 success. And of course, this year, Milan, Merlier and Philipsen, the 3 best sprinters in the world, were at this Tour de France, so making Biniam's life even harder. As a consequence, Biniam was simply not competitive. They should have sent him to the Giro and the Vuelta. And the rest of the team also was not successful in breakaways, so DNS. If they weren't at this Tour de France, I wouldn't have noticed. The team of UnoX Mobility came to this Tour de France with mixed ambitions, stage victories, and a potential GC for Tobias Holland Johannesson after a strong Dauphiné. On stage 11, Jonas Abrahamsen goes into the breakaway from kilometer 0, spends the entire day trucking at the front, and wins the sprint against Mauro Schmidt. That is UnoX's first stage victory at the Tour de France ever, knowing that Jonas Abrahamsen broke his collarbone 9 days before the Tour de France. That is crazy. Also, when it comes to GC, Tobias Johannesson fought bravely, and despite a trip to the hospital after Mont Ventoux, he finishes in the top 10 in P6. That is amazing for UnoX. Honestly, a well-deserved S-tier performance by UnoX at this Tour de France. The first team at the top of our ranking. By the way, today's video is sponsored by Zwift, the go-to training app for indoor cycling. I've been using Zwift for the last 3-4 years now, and I've lost 20 plus kilos in the process. And the reason Zwift motivated me to do exercising is because it made the exercising fun. So, if just like me, you want to try Zwift but you don't have an indoor cycling setup yet, you can now get 10% off a Zwift ride with Kicker Core through the link in the description. Go check it out. Anyway, pretty sure our next team is the last French team, TotalEnergies. Honestly, I've had my eyes on Jordan Gigard for a couple of years, but he really stepped up in this Tour de France. Consistent across the board, and on the final breakaway stage, stage 20, he goes into the break and takes away P10 in GC from Ben O'Connor. The rest of the team was pretty active in TV exposure breakaways, but never truly competitive, so C tier for TotalEnergies. Next up, IPT deserves DNS. Lotto was also not a major factor in this race, but it was nice to see that Arnaud Delis stepped up and actually became Arnaud Delis again. Hopefully that continues. But overall, a DT ride by Lotto, I'm afraid. I feel like Little Trek, our next team, is a difficult one because Jonathan Milan did win 2 sprint stages and the green jersey, but Jasper Philipsen crashed out and no one else really tried. Also, Matthias Skjelmose wasn't doing that well in GC, eventually crashed out, but Quinn Simmons was pretty active and competitive in breakaways. A tier is my score for this team. Our next team, Tudor Pro Cycling, had some panache from Julien Alaphilippe and an early celebration. Storr and Trentin were pretty solid in breakaways, but never truly competitive. D tier for Tudor Pro Cycling. And I feel like Movistar is not too dissimilar. Aino Rubio, Enric Mas, Romeo, all going into breakaways, but the results never came. A D-tier Tour de France for Movistar. Now let's talk about Soudal Quickstep. They came to this Tour de France with mixed ambitions, a team around Remco Evenepoel and his podium ambitions, and of course Merlier and Van Lerberghe. During the first week, Remco won the first time trial, but outside of that, the team support was pretty bad. The team showed a clear inability to position Remco before small hills, and on top of that, I did not like the tactics of the team to begin with. Use Remco's strengths. Don't just play conservatively. That said, going to week 2 to the mountain stages, Remco Evenepoel, there was clearly something off because his level in the mountains was worse than last year. And of course, a few days later, he abandoned the race. Now, despite the GC disaster, Tim Merlier did deliver 2-stage victories, and Valentin Parepintre goes into the break with Pascal Inkhorn as his stuck buddy on the Mont Ventoux stage, and Parepintre wins as a French rider on Mont Ventoux. Absolutely epic. So yeah, a massive 4 stage wins is a pretty great outcome, but we can't ignore the lack of an expected GC result. So just about A tier for Soudal Quickstep. On to another team that arrived with mixed ambitions, Picnic Postel. They had Oscar Onley for GC and 2 potential sprinters, Tobias Lund Andresen and Pavel Bittner. They did manage to achieve 3 top 5s in sprint stages, but most of their success comes from GC. Honestly, I expected a top 10 for Oscar Onley, but he comes in with a 4th place at the end of this Tour de France, so that is amazing. Especially when you consider the amount of UCI points that Picnic Postel will get for that. A-tier Tour de France for Picnic Postel. Okay, our next team, Jayco AlUla, I have to start with their sprinter, Dylan Groenewegen. Pretty bad Tour de France. Their second focus with Ben O'Connor was GC, but I never believed in that. He does exit the Tour de France with a nice victory on Côte la Loze, but he did bottle his top 10 position in GC on stage 20, so I can't ignore that. C tier for Jayco. I expected more from this team. Anyway, on to our final 2 teams. Starting off with Visma Leasebike. First of all, coming into this Tour de France, Tadej Pogacar was the clear favorite, so it's not exactly a surprise that Jonas Vingegaard loses the Tour de France. But I still think their Tour de France was disappointing. Like sure, the team does achieve some consolation prizes, for example, Simon Yates winning on Mont d'Or, or Wout van Aert on the Champs-Elysees, or the team classification, but I feel like I'm left with this overwhelming feeling that they were never even in the game to win this Tour de France to begin with. Like when it comes to the team support, Victor Kampenaerts was pretty great, Sepp Kuss was okay, but the rest of the team simply was not good enough. So yeah, if your team support is below average and Jonas Vingegaard is significantly worse than Tadej Pogacar, then you can have any tactic in the world, you won't win the Tour de France. A B-tier Tour de France for Visma Leasebike. On to our final team then, UAE Team Emirates. Of course, Tadej Pogacar won the Tour de France, won 4 stages at this Tour de France, and of course the polka dot jersey. And I gotta say, to me it looked like he did it all with relative ease. Despite Joao Almeida crashing out, Tim Wellens, Nils Politt, Johnny Narvaez were standout domestiques for Tadej Pogacar and helped him make the difference when necessary. And we can't forget that Tim Wellens won a stage himself. Honestly, I think if Almeida was still in the race in week 3, then Pogacar could have won 6 to 7 stages. Because the team did struggle a little bit with controlling bigger breakaways. By the way, personally, I really like that Tadej Pogacar, instead of playing the safety card, decided to race on stage 21 to go for the stage win. That says a lot about his character. Anyway, S-tier Tour de France for UAE Team Emirates. There we go, with our final team on the board, this is what our tier list looks like. But now it's your turn. What do you agree or disagree with? Drop it in the comments below. Anyway, that's the end of today's video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.